Hello, hey, this is Christopher Bloom over here at Phase 2. Gonna do a quick walkthrough of Pattern Lab. This is just going to be a high-level overview. We're not going to get into too much code, but I would like to walk you through and just show you the concepts of atomic design and then how that's actually built inside of Pattern Lab. So first off, we are going to start, we're going to go to the patternlab.info website, pattern-lab. And Brad Frost here does a really good job of laying out what atomic design is. Kind of the high-level overview is that this is a way of both designing and building websites so that all of your starting pieces compose into larger pieces. The idea here is that if I design things at a really, really small level and then I combine them together, I'll be able to code things at a really, really small level and combine those together to go make bigger, more advanced things. Stuff like, the good old, button. That falls into the concept of atoms in atomic design, right? So things like colors and fonts and buttons and headers and paragraph styles. These decisions that we make at this point, like how much margin at the bottom of a paragraph, what are the rounded corners on the buttons that we use throughout the site. We define them here in atoms so that way when we use atoms later on, they've all got a consistent behavior. We combine atoms together into molecules, and I talked about this in the podcast, but you can think of molecules as just slightly more advanced features. Think of like your login block. Really common thing on a lot of Drupal websites. I've got a couple of text fields. I've got a submit button, maybe a little bit of text. It's wrapped in a block. That's a molecule. I can go take that molecule, put it anywhere in my site. It behaves the way that we want. When we combine molecules together into bigger, more complex pieces on the site, atomic design calls those organisms. Think your headers and your footers, big sidebars, big repeating news pages. Every post on your news, basically blog roll, could be a molecule, and when you combine all those things together, they become the news organism. Now, Pattern Lab gives us the ability to represent all of these prior pieces in a concept called templates. I think most people are familiar with the word wireframe, and if you think of wireframes as just sort of like the base layouts of a site, well, it turns out they're just including organisms and molecules laid out in a unique organization on a page, right? I've got a home page template. I've got a forum template, the news post that we mentioned earlier, the news feed. That would probably be a template. It could be used for news, it could be used for blogs, it could be used for, I don't know, any other piece of content. But the basic layout and structure of it would be a template. And finally, the way Pattern Lab implements this in using real content, real images, and real actual theming is in pages. Pages are just real data applied to templates. Think of pages like your clickable prototype. So Pattern Lab is a tool, and let's go actually do a demo of PL right now. Pattern Lab is a tool to help us build all of this in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Pattern Lab uses Mustache as its template language to just generate a whole bunch of HTML. We can see this in action. Look at our atoms. If we go in here, we want to look at like the buttons atoms. There you go, right? Button 1, button 2, button 3. What's cool about PL is we've got this interface to all of our pieces that really tells us a whole lot about it. So for instance, with our buttons, I can actually go, hit this eyeball, and look at the code that's actually involved with these buttons. So if I click the code button, I can see that the HTML here is just a bunch of paragraphs. That's it. Nothing too fancy, okay? Just a bunch of p tags. Now, this is pretty cool. Lets us know immediately, like, all right, if I use this later on, I have a guaranteed behavior of these buttons. Let's look at some molecules. So one of my favorite things on the internet is the concept of the media block, right? The media block is just an image on one side, a title, and a paragraph, right? Facebook does this, Twitter does this, everyone does this. It's a really, really common pattern. But in this media block, if we look at the resulting HTML, okay, it's kind of cool. I see some classes, block, block thumb, B inner, B thumb. It's not quite BEM, which we talked about in the podcast as well, but it doesn't matter. This is just a demo from Brad Frost. Now, if we look at the mustache for this, the mustache file, this is what it actually looks like. We've got a big blob of data that we can use throughout all of our things. Now, all of these various pieces in Pattern Lab. The data itself just sits in a file. You put a bunch of, it's just a big JSON file. You got a bunch of, it's got an object, got a bunch of indexes and a bunch of values. And you can just refer to it with little squiggly brackets, right? So this is just a little, little dummy URL. All of this is lorem ipsum. The whole point is that we're not using real content or real assets until we get to the pages step. But if I'm here at atoms, it's all lorem ipsum through molecules, organisms, and templates. Everything is gray boxes, not a lot of theming until we get here to pages, which is the goal, right? All of our individual pieces should really not care what color they happen to be. We're going to apply that at the last step when we apply our theme. But the layout and the behavior, we really want to separate from our presentation. All right, so let's go back to the media block that we've got here. So this mustache template includes a variable called URL. That just means that we get a resulting ahref pound that you can see right here, okay? Just that's all that value is, just doesn't go anywhere. But we get to use this thing called atoms square, right? Notice this behavior inside of our mustache file. This says there's a predefined partial somewhere else, a predefined mustache file called something square. It's an atom, and inject it right in that space. Okay, so this is really easy to go find. So this is a dead giveaway. Everything in Pattern Lab has this really cool chain that we can use to go find. It's an atom, and it's called square. Well, it turns out, hey, this is B thumb. I'll bet you if I actually inspect this, this will be a dead giveaway on what we're dealing with. Hey, B thumb. Hey, atom square. This must be an image. Let's go look at our atoms and look at our images. And what do you know? There's one called square right there. Let's take a look at what that is. All it is just a definition of what an image that's perfectly square should look like. So as we go throughout the rest of our site, we understand I've got an image. It's square. I need one for an avatar or for a profile field somewhere, and I can just refer to this piece right there, and it's really easily usable. So this helps us sort of fence in the scope of a project when we get to say, all right, hey, look, these are all of the images we can expect, the image dimensions and pieces that we can expect to use on this site, right? What's the last thing that we want to do? Last thing we want to give to our users is the ability to have any ratio, any size, any image, anywhere. We say, look, hey, you've actually got like 5 unique image sizes. And then we have expectations and we have rules as we move forward to compose our bigger pieces. All right. So back to the media block, we can see really quick that it actually just uses another partial, atom square, and then 2 pieces of data. That's it. This is the piece of data at the headline index, which itself contains a short index, and we can see, oh, I've got a short headline. There it is, piece of cake. Okay, now when I go into my organisms, I can see big pieces like the header, right? Or the footer, which isn't really awesome, isn't that great, but it's a big piece. It could hold a bunch of molecules if we needed to. I think something a little more advanced is, the article, title, paragraph, big image that may or may not show subsequent text, a quote, right? We can see this in action. Now, If I take these things and I repeat them, I can get a comment thread, right? That starts with a title at the top or an input form at the top, and then a bunch of comments that show up down below. Each one of these is actually a molecule, and you can see this right here. Take a look at what we're doing down here in this comments field. I've got this ability to loop over random items. And every item I loop over, I send it off to the molecule to render, so I can end up with completely unique images and text. It's very cool. Anybody that's done logicless templates using handlebars or mustache or twig, this should look really, really familiar. We're basically saying for 5 items here, for each item, render it using this template. And at this point, we're just looking for some dummy data for us to be able to go demo and play with. So let's look at our templates. Templates, just wireframes. Let's take a look. Homepage, just a bunch of gray boxes. I don't want my content confusing what my layout and my behavior of the page is. Got a big title, got some sub stuff here, got a bunch of news posts. And these themselves are actually composed of molecules and organisms, so we can see that in action. If I go to my code, here's my page. So check it out. If I go here and I say, okay, right up here at the top, hang on, let's go and take a look at what this class is. Be thumb, be inner. Here we go. Okay. Let's go to the 3 up. Right. There we go. Okay. So G3 up, we can see we have defined 3 things called touts. There must be 3 of them. That little pound icon indicates we're looping through them. And for every one of them, we're going to print out a molecule called block inset. And we can see this in action if I go to molecules, blocks, block inset. There it is. Now, this is really important to point out here. Pattern Lab, every component does not care about the dimensions that it behaves in. It shouldn't. The container should contain our element. You can see our block inset text just blowing all the way across the page because it's its job to go 100%. So if we go back to our templates, we go to our home page, we can see each one of these behaves great because they're actually given a container to work within, right? And that's what's really great. Pattern Lab is mobile first responsive out of the box. It forces you to be mobile first responsive out of the box. You can't not be that. For our big header here, right? If I inspect this, I'll see that it's actually part of hero, okay? So I've got this molecules block hero. I can always go to molecules, blocks, and then go right to my hero and see it in action. So if I hit close, there it is. It's just another variant of these things that we can go use. If we look up some more templates, here's a blog list, okay? All right, I got my header, got my blog list. But if I go and look at my code, you can see that I'm actually doing this really big organisms latest posts. That's all of the stuff right here in the middle. I can go to organisms. I can go to sections. I can go to latest posts. And there you go. There it is without any wrapper, anything. It just exists on its own, as it should. It should just be able to exist and not care about a header or a sidebar. It just is, and wherever we stick it, however we contain it, it should behave. Okay, and the last step in this process is we go and we apply real content. We go and take a look. Oh, hey, here's what the home page looks like with images and maybe real colors and maybe real content. So you're able to present to clients and stakeholders that let's not get confused by how our content looks in these regions. Let's talk about the behavior here. And then we can go talk about now how does our content perform within the behavior that we've accepted. So this is a really, really amazing tool to get a bunch of code written, get a bunch of templates laid out. Pattern Lab out of the box is very Drupal-y in that it's a bunch of templates that are themselves um, built from this idea of generate data and then use a bunch of partials to render that data in context. Okay, so this works if you're using Express or you're using Drupal, or maybe you're using something, some other custom solution. But at the end of the day, it comes down to there's a data source and there's a bunch of templates that need to consume that data. Pattern Lab already works in that way, and it's 100% local. It runs in PHP, and it makes it really amazing to be able to demo that, hey, look, your site's actually responsive out of the box, right? Like, we're able to go do these really, really amazing things. We've got this cool interface. I can actually take this, and I believe I can let's go width equals 320 here. I can link an actual URL to a Pattern Lab instance at a specific width. Let me try this better. Is this going to work? Crap, I totally screwed this up. I'll figure out how to do this. I'll get you the right URL, hopefully. But you can link to specific widths. You can link and say, hey, client, tell me exactly how our primary navigation looks, right? Okay, here's how it looks out of context. That's a bad example. Let's go and look at, breadcrumbs. Okay, there it is. It's just a list. Maybe we need to style these so that I can go use those somewhere else in a sane way. So anyway, that's Pattern Lab. That's my quick little demo. And go ahead and hit the comments on this podcast if you have any questions. Thanks.